In this lesson, we will solve multi-step equations by clearing fractions. So for our first example, I actually want to go through it 2 times using 2 different methods. So method 1 would of course be the method that we are used to, which is where we would have to take these fractions and make them all common denominators and then do our calculations. So using method 1, I would look at the 5, the 2, and the 10 and decide that I should have a denominator of 10, which means I would multiply my first fraction by 2 on top and on bottom to make it 10, and my second fraction by 5 on top and on bottom to make it 10. That would then give me the equation 4 over 10 plus v equals 5 over 10 minus 3 over 10. Now from here it's very easy. I can take 5/10 minus 3/10, which is 2/10. On this side I have 4/10. Then I would subtract 4/10 from each side, and I end up with an answer of negative 2/10, which of course would reduce to negative 1/5. Now method 2 involves clearing fractions. So by clearing fractions, instead of making everything have a denominator of 10, I'm going to multiply everything in the equation by 10. So I'm going to take 2/5 times 10 plus 10 times v equals 1/2 times 10 minus 3/10 times 10. Now the advantage to doing it this way instead of method 1 is that once I do my first step, I will no longer have fractions. So 10 and 5 reduce to 1 and 2, and 10 and 2 reduce to 1 and 5, and 10 and 10 reduce to 1 and 1. So when I write my next step, I have 2 times 2, which is 4. I have 10v, I have 5 times 1, which is 5, and I have 3 times 1, which is 3. So now I have the same thing that I had over here. I want you to notice what I've got going on here. The 5, the 4, the 5, and the 3 are the same. The only thing different is this, but that has just been popped up here as though it's 10 over 10. So that's essentially what we're doing, is making it so they all would have the same denominator, and then we get rid of it. So from here, now I can simplify very easily. I have 4 plus 10v equals 2. I'm going to subtract my 4, which gives me 10v equals negative 2. Divide by that 10, that gives me my negative 2/10, which still reduces to negative 1/5. So we got the same answer either way. I think method 2 is just a little bit easier, so that's what I'm going to use moving forward. For this next one, we look at 4, 3, and 2, and of course our least common denominator would be 12, so that's what I'm going to multiply by all my terms. And I find it easier to actually write it next to each and every term. Some people just like to put big parentheses and put a 12 on the outside, but it's very easy to forget a term if you do it that way. So now I'm going to reduce. 12 and 4 reduces to 3 and 1. 12 and 3 reduces to 4 and 1. This one does not reduce because it wasn't a fraction. 12 and 2 reduce to 6 and 1. Now what I have left is 3 times x, which is 3x, minus 4 times 2, so minus 8. 12 times x is 12x, and 6. So now I'm going to do some simplification. I'm going to get all of my x's to one side. I'm going to choose to get the x's to the right so that I can deal with positive x's instead. And then of course I would have to subtract 6 to get negative 14 equals 9x. And dividing by 9 doesn't really do me any favors because I still end up with an ugly fraction. So that is my answer, is negative 14/9. Just leave it like that. There's no reason to turn it into an improper fraction, and certainly don't turn it into a decimal. For this question, notice again I have 4, 3, and 2, which means that 12 is the best way to go. Just be careful here because when I multiply by 12, I'm taking this by 12, I'm taking this by 12, I'm taking this by 12, and I'm taking basically this whole thing times 12 because the 1/2 is already going to be distributed. So don't take 12 times 1/2 and 12 times x and 12 times minus 4. We're only going to end up doing it with the 1/2, which will then distribute to the other items. So here I'm going to reduce to 3 and 1. Here I will reduce to 4 and 1. This one does not reduce, and this one reduces to 6 and 1. And again, I'm not going to distribute it to those because that's happening on my next step. So now I have 3 times x, which is 3x. I have 4 times 1x, which is 4x. I have minus 12 times 3. And then this one is just 6, and then parenthesis x minus 4. So again, notice this is where I'm going to end up distributing. On the left side, I'm going to go ahead and combine those terms together. On the right side, 6 times x is 6x, and 6 times minus 4 is minus 24. I will subtract 6x because I want all of my x's to one side. So this gives me x minus 36 equals negative 24. And then I will add 36 to each side, and that gives me x equals 12. Again, we can take the 12 and plug that back in, but I will let you do that step on your own. For this question, again, I'm looking at the 5, the 2, and the 10, so I'm going to multiply everything by 10. Again, don't forget to take that 2 times 10. That's the most common mistake. Then I'm going to reduce. 10 and 5 is 1 and 2. 10 and 2 is 1 and 5. This one does not reduce because it's not a fraction, and this one, the 10s reduce all of the way. So now I have a 2 here on the outside, and then I still have x minus 2, and I'm going to write it in parentheses because that 2 needs to be multiplied by both values. Then I have a minus and my 5, and then x minus 4. 10 times 2 is 20. And then, of course, I have plus x plus 4. This one I didn't have to write in parentheses because this ended up canceling out, which means I was just multiplying by 1. Now let's simplify. 2 times x minus 2 times 2 minus 5 times x, and then minus 5 times minus 4 makes that a plus 20. So be very careful here. If you need to ching to make it a negative, negative 5 times minus 4 is minus negative 20 or plus 20. And then, whoops, on this side, I'm going to go ahead and combine the 20 and the 4, which gives me x plus 24. Then on this side, I've got 2x and minus 5x. That gives me negative 3x. I've got a minus 4 and a plus 20, which gives me plus 16. Now I'm going to choose to add 3x to each side because I want x's to one side. That gives me 16 equals 4x plus 24. And then, of course, subtracting the 24 from each side would give me negative 8 equals 4x. And then, of course, dividing by 4, I would get negative 2 equals x, which I could write as x equals negative 2. I will leave the check for you. As always, here's one for you to try on your own. So press pause, try this question on your own, and then press play to see how you did. For this one, I would certainly multiply every value by 12. Again, pay special attention to this situation over here, because we're only really going to multiply that 3/4 by 12. So 12 and 3 reduce to 1 and 4, 4 and 12 to 1 and 3. This one does not reduce, and then 12 and 4 to 1 and 3. So writing my new equation, I have 4 times 1 times x, that's 4x. I have 3 times 1 times x, that's 3x. I have 12 times 1, which is 12. And then on the other side, I have 3 times 3, which is 9, and then x plus 2. So on this side, I'm going to combine 4 and 3 to get 7x. On this side, I'm going to distribute 9 times x and 9 times 2. Then I'm going to combine like terms, so I'm going to choose to subtract 7x from each side. And that leaves me with just a negative 12 on the left. Then I'm going to subtract 18 from each side, which gives me negative 30 equals 2x, which I'm going to rewrite up here because I'm running out of room. I'm going to divide each side by 2, which gives me negative 15 equals x, and that is my final answer.